Paul now has a place of it in this humble servant that is suffering here in prison. And he sees that what he is going through is being poured out upon the service of their faith. It's a strengthening of the church's faith. What does this look like for us today? Many of us can, in the United States, we can get this thing thinking of lazy Christianity, right? Because none of this ever really hits home for us, right? None of us are going to prison day in and day not out for having faith in Jesus, right? Did you know just a few years ago we can see how this played out for even us today? There was a pastor up in Canada, and without getting into all the minutia that was to be considered in the time of COVID, we saw how many churches forsook the assembling together and closed their doors. And not only this, but in Canada, there was a huge push to have churches shut their doors no matter what, that the government overstepped their realm of authority and said, church, you have to shut your door down. You have to close the doors and lock them. You can't go in and enter them and worship God any longer, is what they told them. And it took one pastor in Canada, Pastor Coates. He stood up and opened the doors. He stood up and continued worshiping God. He continued to praise and preach the word of life. What was he doing? He was being a light amongst the darkness. What was he doing? Holding fast to the word of truth. He was not forsaking it. He was more worried about being held responsible from God as a pastor and servant of his than he was a citizen of Canada. And what happened to him? They came and arrested him. And he sat in prison because of him worshiping God and being obedient to Jesus Christ as a servant of his. What happened to Canada because of that? Churches opened their doors. Churches in the United States opened their doors. What Paul is doing in here is he's showing how being strong in the faith actually encourages the fellow Christian to act as Christians ought to act. Like I said, without getting into the minutia of all the debates and thoughts that went along with COVID, the point of it is that God has given us command to assemble together and to worship him. And as servants of him, we ought not to disobey him. Be the light amongst the world, amongst a crooked and perverse generation. And how do we do this? Holding fast the word of life.